There was something uniquely comforting about watching Little House on the Prairie. For millions of families throughout the 1970s and early 1980s, the series wasn't just another television show waiting at the end of the day. It felt like home. The dusty roads, the quiet sunsets over Walnut Grove, the laughter around the dinner table, and the simple lessons about kindness, hardship, and love created a world that people never truly forgot. And now, more than 50 years after the show first premiered in 1974, many fans still remember exactly how it felt to sit down and watch the Ingalls family together. But time has a way of changing everything. Some of the beloved cast members went on to live long and fascinating lives in Hollywood. Others slowly disappeared from the spotlight altogether. A few faced heartbreaking personal struggles behind the scenes. And sadly, some are no longer with us, though their presence on the show continues to live on through generations of viewers. Today, we're taking a nostalgic journey back to Walnut Grove to see what really happened to the cast of Little House on the Prairie, then and now in 2026. And once you see how much time has passed, you may never look at the show the same way again. Michael Landon, Charles Ingalls. For many viewers, Michael Landon wasn't just the star of Little House on the Prairie. He was the heart of it. As Charles Ingalls, he represented the kind of father figure television rarely creates anymore. Warm, patient, hard-working, and deeply human. Whether he was building a barn, comforting Laura after a difficult lesson, or quietly carrying the weight of providing for his family, Landon brought a sincerity to the role that made audiences trust him instantly. There was something incredibly calming about his presence on screen. At a time when television often focused on action and glamour, Charles Ingalls reminded viewers of simpler values: honesty, sacrifice, and love for family. Many fans who grew up watching the show still describe him as the father they wished they had. But off-screen, Michael Landon's life was far more complicated than the peaceful image audiences saw every week. Before Little House, he had already become famous through Bonanza, making him one of television's biggest stars. Yet it was Little House that allowed him to become more than just an actor. He became a writer, director, producer, and creative force behind the series itself. In many ways, Walnut Grove existed because of his vision. After the show ended in 1983, Landon continued working in television with Highway to Heaven, another emotional, family-oriented series that reflected his optimistic worldview. But in 1991, fans around the world were shocked when Michael Landon revealed that he had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. The news felt deeply personal to viewers who had spent years watching him as America's favorite television father. Tragically, only a few months later, Michael Landon passed away at the age of 54. Even decades later, many fans still say his death felt like losing a member of their own family. And perhaps that says everything about the kind of connection he created on screen. Today, more than 3 decades after his passing, Michael Landon remains the face most people immediately associate with Little House on the Prairie. His performances continue to comfort audiences old and new, proving that genuine warmth never really disappears. Melissa Gilbert, Laura Ingalls. If Michael Landon was the heart of the show, then Melissa Gilbert was its soul. As Laura Ingalls, she became one of the most recognizable child stars of the 1970s. Audiences watched her grow up almost in real time, from a curious little girl running barefoot across fields to a young woman facing adulthood, love, and loss. Laura wasn't perfect, and that's exactly why viewers loved her. She could be stubborn, emotional, impulsive, and fiercely loyal all at once. For many young viewers, she felt real in a way television characters often didn't. Melissa Gilbert carried that emotional authenticity naturally. Behind the scenes, Michael Landon reportedly treated her almost like a daughter, helping guide her through the pressures of child stardom. The bond between them became one of the emotional foundations of the series itself. But growing up in Hollywood was not always easy. After Little House on the Prairie ended, Gilbert struggled with the difficult transition many child actors face. While she continued acting in television, movies, and series, life outside the spotlight brought personal challenges, failed relationships, health issues, and periods of emotional hardship. In later interviews, she openly discussed the pressures of fame, cosmetic surgery, addiction struggles within Hollywood culture, and the emotional cost of constantly trying to stay relevant in the entertainment industry. Yet, despite those difficult years, Melissa Gilbert never fully disappeared from public life. Over time, many fans came to admire not only the girl they remembered from Walnut Grove, but also the honesty she showed as an adult, reflecting on her own life. In recent years, Gilbert has embraced a quieter lifestyle, often speaking about aging naturally and stepping away from Hollywood's unrealistic expectations. For longtime viewers, there's something strangely comforting about seeing Laura Ingalls grow older with grace, just like the audience who grew up watching her. And even now, in 2026, for millions of people around the world, she will always be the spirited little girl running through the fields of Walnut Grove. Melissa Sue Anderson, Mary Ingalls. While Laura brought energy and emotion to the series, Mary Ingalls brought gentleness and quiet strength. Melissa Sue Anderson's portrayal of Mary made the character unforgettable for an entirely different reason. She played Mary with intelligence, calmness, and emotional maturity far beyond her years. For many viewers, Mary represented responsibility and grace during difficult times. And perhaps no storyline in the series remains more emotionally remembered than Mary losing her eyesight. Those episodes became some of the most heartbreaking moments in television history for many fans of the era. Audiences watched a young girl's future suddenly change forever, and Melissa Sue Anderson delivered those scenes with remarkable emotional restraint. She didn't overact. She made the pain feel real. Off-screen, however, Melissa Sue Anderson was known for being much quieter and more private than many of her co-stars. Unlike some child actors who chased fame aggressively after a successful show, Anderson slowly stepped away from Hollywood over time. After Little House on the Prairie, she continued acting for several years in television and film projects, but eventually chose a more private life focused on family. In later years, she moved to Canada and largely stayed away from the constant spotlight that often consumes former child stars. For many fans, there's something admirable about that decision. While Hollywood often pressures actors to remain visible forever, Melissa Sue Anderson seemed comfortable letting the work speak for itself. And honestly, it still does. Even decades later, many viewers still remember the emotional depth she brought to Mary Ingalls. Her performance remains one of the quiet, emotional anchors of the entire series. And for fans revisiting Little House on the Prairie today, seeing Mary again often brings back memories not only of the show itself, but of an entirely different era of television storytelling. Karen Grassle, Caroline Ingalls. While Michael Landon often received much of the public attention, Karen Grassle quietly became one of the emotional pillars of Little House on the Prairie. As Caroline Ingalls, she portrayed the kind of mother many viewers instantly trusted: patient, compassionate, intelligent, and emotionally resilient. She wasn't loud or dramatic. Instead, Karen Grassle gave Caroline a quiet strength that grounded the entire family. Whether she was comforting her daughters during moments of fear or standing beside Charles through hardship, Caroline represented stability. In many ways, she became the emotional center of Walnut Grove itself. But behind the scenes, Karen Grassle's experience on the show was reportedly more difficult than many fans realized. Over the years, she spoke openly about creative disagreements and feeling undervalued compared to some of her male counterparts in television. She later revealed that her relationship with Michael Landon became strained at times during the later seasons of the show. Still, despite those tensions, her performance remained consistently warm and believable throughout the series. After Little House on the Prairie ended, Grassle continued acting in theater and television, though she never again reached the same level of mainstream fame. Unlike many Hollywood stars obsessed with visibility, she appeared comfortable living a more grounded and artistic life away from celebrity culture. In later interviews, fans noticed something touching about her reflections on the show. There was nostalgia, but also honesty. She seemed to understand that Little House had become larger than anyone involved in creating it. Today, in 2026, Karen Grassle is remembered not only as Carolyn Ingalls, but as one of the faces that helped define family television for an entire generation. And for many longtime viewers, seeing Caroline in old episodes still feels strangely comforting, almost like revisiting childhood itself. Alison Arngrim, Nellie Oleson. Every great television series needs a character audiences love to hate. And on Little House on the Prairie, nobody did that better than Nellie Oleson. With her blonde curls, smug smile, and cruel attitude, Mellie quickly became one of the most unforgettable television villains of the 1970s. She bullied Laura, manipulated situations, and constantly created chaos in Walnut Grove. And viewers absolutely loved it. Alison Arngrim played the role so convincingly that many fans genuinely believed she was just as unpleasant in real life. Ironically, the opposite was true. Behind the scenes, Arngrim was reportedly funny, warm, energetic, and incredibly close with several cast members, especially Melissa Gilbert. The contrast between Nellie's personality and Alison's real-life character became one of the funniest behind-the-scenes stories associated with the show. But Alison Arngrim's life outside television was far darker than many viewers knew at the time. Years later, she courageously revealed that she had suffered severe abuse during childhood. Her openness about trauma shocked many fans who had only remembered her as the mischievous girl from Walnut Grove. Instead of hiding from those painful experiences, Arngrim eventually became an outspoken advocate for abuse survivors and charitable causes. In many ways, audiences began to admire her even more as an adult than they did during the show's original run. Unlike some former child stars who try to distance themselves from their iconic roles, Alison Arngrim fully embraced the legacy of Nellie Oleson. She frequently appears at fan conventions, participates in reunions, and shares humorous stories about the series with longtime viewers. And somehow, after all these years, Nellie Oleson remains one of the most entertaining characters people still talk about from the show. Not because she was kind, but because she was impossible to forget. Dean Butler, Almanzo Wilder. When Almanzo Wilder first appeared on Little House on the Prairie, many viewers immediately understood why Laura Ingalls fell in love with him. Dean Butler brought charm, confidence, and calm masculinity to the role, creating one of the show's most beloved romantic storylines. For audiences who had watched Laura grow up over the years, seeing her relationship with Almanzo develop felt emotional and deeply personal. It symbolized the moment childhood finally gave way to adulthood. The chemistry between Butler and Melissa Gilbert became one of the defining emotional arcs of the later seasons. Interestingly, Dean Butler almost seemed too modern and polished compared to the rough simplicity of Walnut Grove. But that contrast helped Almanzo stand out. He represented a different future for Laura, one built not only on survival, but also on emotional partnership and maturity. After the series ended, Butler continued acting in television and film projects throughout the 1980s and beyond, though none reached the same cultural impact as Little House. Over time, however, he gradually shifted away from acting itself and became increasingly involved in production, sports media, and documentary work. Unlike many stars trapped by nostalgia, Butler appeared to transition peacefully into a different phase of life. Still, fans of Little House on the Prairie continue to associate him primarily with Almanzo Wilder. And honestly, it's difficult not to. Even decades later, many viewers still remember the emotional warmth of Laura and Almanzo's relationship as one of the most comforting aspects of the series. For audiences who grew up watching the show, Almanzo wasn't just Laura's husband. He represented growing up itself. Victor French, Isaiah Edwards. Some characters on Little House on the Prairie brought wisdom. Others brought humor. And Isaiah Edwards somehow brought both at the same time. Played brilliantly by Victor French, Mr. Edwards quickly became one of the most beloved supporting characters in Walnut Grove. Rough around the edges, but deeply loyal underneath, Edwards felt authentic in a way many television characters rarely do. He could be funny one moment and heartbreaking the next. Victor French had a natural ability to portray emotionally wounded men, hiding pain behind humor and toughness. That complexity gave the character surprising emotional depth throughout the series. Off-screen, French and Michael Landon shared a very close friendship that extended beyond Little House. The two had worked together previously on Bonanza and later reunited again for Highway to Heaven. Their friendship became one of the creative foundations behind many of the emotional moments audiences loved. Sadly, Victor French passed away in 1989 at the age of 54 after battling lung cancer. For many fans, his death felt especially painful because Mr. Edwards embodied so much humanity within the series. He wasn't perfect. He struggled, made mistakes, drank too much at times, and carried emotional scars. But that imperfection made him real. Even today, Isaiah Edwards remains one of the most emotionally remembered characters in Little House on the Prairie history. And perhaps that's because viewers saw a little bit of themselves in him. Richard Bull, Nels Olson. Among all the louder personalities in Walnut Grove, Nels Olson often became the quiet voice of reason. Played by Richard Bull, Nels was the long-suffering husband of Harriet Olson and the father constantly caught between chaos, gossip, and family drama. While Harriet and Nellie often dominated scenes with their strong personalities, Nels brought balance through patience, humor, and subtle kindness. And viewers loved him for it. There was something deeply relatable about the way he reacted to the madness around him. His tired expressions, awkward attempts to keep peace, and quiet compassion made him feel incredibly human. In many ways, Nels represented ordinary decency. Richard Bull had already built a long acting career before joining Little House on the Prairie, appearing in numerous classic television series throughout the 1950s and 1960s. But for many audiences, Nels Olson became the role people remembered most. Off-screen, Bull was reportedly intelligent, thoughtful, and deeply respected by fellow cast members. Unlike the exaggerated energy of some characters on the show, his calm personality made him a stabilizing presence behind the scenes as well. After Little House ended, Richard Bull continued acting occasionally, though he gradually stepped away from Hollywood as he grew older. Sadly, he passed away in 2014 at the age of 89. Yet even today, fans still smile when remembering Nels Olson quietly surviving another argument inside the Mercantile. Because beneath the comedy, Richard Bull gave the series something essential: gentle humanity. Catherine McGregor, Harriet Olson. If Nellie Olson was unforgettable, then Harriet Olson was absolutely impossible to ignore. Played brilliantly by Catherine McGregor, Harriet became one of the most iconic television mothers of her era, opinionated, dramatic, judgmental, and endlessly entertaining. She could insult someone, start a town rumor, and create complete chaos within minutes, and audiences loved every second of it. What made Harriet such a memorable character wasn't simply her sharp tongue. Beneath the humor and arrogance, Catherine McGregor occasionally revealed moments of vulnerability that reminded viewers Harriet was still human underneath all the pride. That emotional complexity helped prevent the character from becoming cartoonish. Off-screen, however, McGregor was reportedly far more spiritual and introspective than fans expected. In real life, she became deeply interested in meditation, philosophy, and Eastern spirituality. As the years passed, she gradually distanced herself from Hollywood life and chose a quieter existence away from the entertainment industry. Interestingly, Catherine McGregor did not appear in the final television movie connected to Little House on the Prairie, something many fans noticed immediately. Yet, despite her absence from later productions, Harriet Olsen remained one of the defining personalities of the entire franchise. In 2018, Catherine McGregor passed away at the age of 93. For longtime viewers, losing her felt like losing one of the final living connections to Walnut Grove itself. And even now, decades later, it's difficult to imagine the series without Harriet storming through the mercantile, complaining about something. She may have frustrated everyone in town, but she became part of television history forever. Matthew Labuteau, Albert Ingalls. Albert Ingalls arrived later than some of the original cast members, but he quickly became one of the show's most emotionally important characters. Played by Matthew Labuteau, Albert brought emotional depth and vulnerability to the later seasons of the series. Unlike some characters who existed mainly for lighthearted moments, Albert often carried some of the show's heaviest storylines. He struggled, he made mistakes, he searched for belonging, and that made audiences connect with him deeply. Viewers watched Albert evolve from a troubled orphan into an adopted member of the Ingalls family, and many fans saw parts of themselves in his emotional journey. His storylines often explored insecurity, identity, fear, and redemption in ways that felt surprisingly mature for family television at the time. Off-screen, Matthew Labuteau had his own remarkable story. As a child, he reportedly faced significant health challenges, including autism-related developmental difficulties early in life. Yet, despite those struggles, he eventually built a successful acting career that inspired many people who later learned about his background. After Little House on the Prairie, Labuteau continued working steadily in television and voice acting, though he largely stayed away from the intense celebrity spotlight. Unlike some former child actors whose lives spiraled publicly, he maintained a relatively stable and private path through adulthood. And perhaps that quiet resilience makes Albert's story feel even more meaningful today. For many fans revisiting the show in 2026, Albert remains one of the most emotionally remembered characters because his struggles felt real. Not heroic, not glamorous, just human. Lindsay Greenbush, Carrie Ingalls. Few viewers realized during the original run of the show that Carrie Ingalls was actually played by twins. Lindsay and Sydney Greenbush shared the role of Carrie throughout much of Little House on the Prairie, becoming some of the youngest faces audiences associated with Walnut Grove. As little Carrie, they represented innocence. She was often quietly observing the world around her, while older characters experienced heartbreak, conflict, and change. Even when Carrie had fewer lines than other characters, her presence helped reinforce the feeling that viewers were watching a real family grow together over time. And that feeling mattered. Unlike some child stars pushed aggressively into Hollywood careers, the Greenbush twins gradually stepped away from acting after the series ended. As adults, they largely chose private lives outside the entertainment industry. For many fans, there's something surprisingly emotional about seeing recent photos of the twins today. Because suddenly, the tiny child from Walnut Grove is now in her 50s. And in that moment, viewers are reminded not only of how much the cast changed, but how much their own lives changed too. That's part of what makes Little House on the Prairie so emotionally powerful after all these years. The show doesn't simply remind people of television memories. It reminds them of who they once were when they first watched it. Dabbs Greer, Reverend Alden. There was something comforting about Reverend Alden. Played by veteran actor Dabbs Greer, the character became one of Walnut Grove's moral anchors, gentle, wise, and quietly dependable during moments of hardship. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't dramatic, but his presence gave the town emotional stability. Whether he was helping families through grief, offering guidance during conflict, or simply standing beside the community in difficult times, Reverend Alden represented compassion in its purest form. Dabbs Greer brought decades of acting experience to the role. Before joining Little House on the Prairie, he had already appeared in countless classic television programs and films, becoming one of those instantly recognizable faces audiences trusted without always knowing his name. And perhaps that familiarity made Reverend Alden feel even more believable. After Little House, Greer continued acting well into his later years, including memorable appearances in The Green Mile, where older audiences were pleasantly surprised to see him once again. He passed away in 2007 at the age of 90. Yet for many fans, Dabbs Greer will always be remembered, standing quietly inside the little church of Walnut Grove. A calm voice in a noisy world. And somehow, that feeling still resonates today. Charlotte Stewart, Miss Beadle. For many viewers, school scenes inside Walnut Grove would never have felt the same without Miss Beadle. Played by Charlotte Stewart, the kind-hearted teacher became one of the earliest authority figures young viewers connected with emotionally. She represented patience, education, and gentle encouragement during a time when life on the frontier was often difficult and uncertain. There was something comforting about her classroom. The simple wooden desks, the chalkboard, the quiet lessons about responsibility and growing up. Together, those moments created memories audiences still associate with childhood itself. Charlotte Stewart brought warmth and sincerity to the role, making Miss Beadle feel approachable rather than strict. She became the kind of teacher many children wished they had. Off-screen, Stewart continued acting steadily after leaving Little House on the Prairie, appearing in various television and film projects over the years. She also remained deeply connected to the legacy of the series and frequently participated in fan events and interviews reflecting on the cultural impact of Walnut Grove. As time passed, fans increasingly viewed actors like Charlotte Stewart as living reminders of a gentler era of television, an era where stories moved slower and emotions felt more genuine. Jonathan Gilbert, Willie Olson. While Nellie Olson often dominated attention, her younger brother Willie quietly became another familiar face audiences watched grow up over the years. Played by Jonathan Gilbert, Willie evolved from a mischievous troublemaker into a more mature young man as the series progressed. For longtime viewers, that transformation felt surprisingly emotional. Because one of the unique things about Little House on the Prairie was that audiences didn't simply watch characters. They watched children grow up. Interestingly, unlike many cast members who stayed connected to Hollywood after the show ended, Jonathan Gilbert chose a completely different path. After leaving acting, he stepped away from the entertainment industry almost entirely and reportedly pursued a career in finance and business. For years, many fans wondered what happened to him, because he remained so absent from public life. And perhaps that mystery only made viewers more nostalgic when revisiting old episodes. Because somewhere, in those scenes of Walnut Grove, still exists the version of Willie audiences remember forever. Young, energetic, and frozen in time. As the years continue to pass, Little House on the Prairie has become more than just a television series. It has become a time capsule. A reminder of evenings spent with family. A reminder of simpler storytelling. A reminder of childhood, from millions of viewers around the world. Some members of the cast found lasting success. Some quietly disappeared from Hollywood. Some faced painful struggles. And some are sadly no longer here. But together, they created something rare, a world people still return to decades later for comfort. And maybe that's the real reason Little House on the Prairie continues to survive generation after generation. Not because it was perfect, but because it felt human. And even now, in 2026, more than 50 years after the series first began, the people of Walnut Grove still feel like old friends, waiting for us to come home again.